Have you been shooting 35mm for a while and curious about or looking to get into medium format film photography? The prohibitive thing for a lot of us though is the price. It can be expensive, especially if you already shoot 35mm and you're looking to add a medium format camera to your inventory. Welcome back everyone, my name's Hashem, you're watching Pushing Film. I hope you're all doing well and staying interested in film photography, getting out there and shooting. In today's video, I want to talk about some budget options for getting into medium format film photography. So maybe you've mastered 35mm, you've been shooting it for a long time now and you've always been curious and you think it's time to step it up into medium format, or maybe you just want to try something new, or you want that increase in resolution, or maybe the special look that you can only get with a larger negative size of shooting medium format film. So after you've reached that decision, the next thing you'll probably do is look around and see the prices, and they have gone up, especially with the rise in popularity of film photography. The price of secondhand medium format cameras is a lot higher than it used to be, so you might find that a little bit prohibitive. But there are alternative options. So to start things off, let's say you're on the very lowest end of that budget, maybe somewhere between $20 and $100. Now, that's not a lot, sure, but one of the main options you have in this sort of budget range is the toy cameras. Something like the Lomo Diana F, which I have one of here, or an even more popular option is something like the Holga. Now, before you sort of dismiss that and skip past, just consider the fact that because these cameras are so limited, they can often cause you to think outside the box a lot more and really exercise your skill as a photographer. So whether or not you're actually shooting medium format already or looking to get into it, or even just someone who's been shooting for years, the capacity for one of these toy cameras to really test you as a photographer is great. And I think it's good for almost anyone to try at some point. Oftentimes, all you have on these cameras is just a few different aperture settings and just one shutter speed. And if you've only been shooting 35mm and just wanting to test the waters, this can make a great option. I actually gave one of these exact cameras away for the 20K giveaway on this channel, and I really love using my one every now and then when I get the chance. I've made a few good images on it, and I really like the fun, creative aspect of it and the fact that it strips away all the control you get on a more complex camera. So if you do a quick Google or Flickr search for images taken on something like the Holga, you'll find some amazing images out there. There's even some great photographers, one of which is Jacqueline Walters. Now, she has made some amazing imagery and pretty much all of it's been made on a Holga camera and black and white film. If you look at her website, she's got multiple series and she sells prints, all just images made on a plastic toy camera. So some kind of plastic or toy camera really is going to be your cheapest option. There are some unusual plastic TLRs, or you could even step up just a little bit higher in the budget, somewhere closer to the $100 side of that, and get something like a Lomo Lubitel or any of these sort of cameras secondhand. As we move towards that $100 mark, or let's say $100 to $200, this is where you open up a little bit more in terms of options. And the best thing you can try and do to maximize what you can get within that price range is look out for a good deal. Don't just instantly buy the first thing that comes up. Learn the art of setting up things like search alerts, which I often do. So with listings and sites like Gumtree, Craigslist, eBay, what I often do is put in saved searches. So if you just put in some search terms like medium format or vintage camera or folding camera or TLR, those are going to be some of the best options you can get within that price range. So to elaborate on that, let's say you have that $100 to $200 to spend. One of the next things you probably want to go for is something like a twin lens reflex camera or TLR. A lot of the cameras like the Yashicas, Minolta Autocord, or the Ricoflex. You don't have to go for the more popular ones like the Rolleiflex or even the Yashica 124G. All of those are becoming really popular, so they're a little bit on the higher end of the budget. But just by doing that method of setting up saved searches on eBay, I recently, just while doing research for this video, came up on a used Yashica Flex twin lens reflex 6x6 camera from Japan, which I bought for about $100. It's not in the greatest cosmetic condition, but that's a great deal. And that's something that you can do if you have the patience. So don't be discouraged when you actually go on and search for a Yashica Flex camera and you think, well, I don't see any for $100 or anything even near it. The thing is, you're not going to find it if you just browse once or twice, or even if you just regularly check. It is good to do things like setting up saved searches or just being really persistent and patient. Sometimes it takes months to find a good deal, so definitely take that into consideration. So if you have that patience and persistence, you can come across some really good cameras that would normally be worth, let's say, $300 to $400, but within that lower price range. Some other options within that price range are things like folding cameras. A lot of the time these aren't as popular, but if you look up folding cameras and all the different variants, there's way too many out there to list, but they often make another alternative as well as TLR cameras. And even on that subject, you don't even have to go for one of the popular name brand TLR cameras like the Japanese ones like the Yashica, Minolta, Ricoh and all that. There are other Chinese brands like Seagull that probably work just as well for someone starting off, and they're going to be a lot cheaper. So just look into everything, make your search terms a bit more broad, and do a bit of research into what would fit your budget. So another good thing to do is to join online groups or local community groups like that, whether it's Facebook groups or something similar. Or on that same vein, you can buy from friends. If you have friends that are not using a camera anymore, they're probably likely to give you a good price on it. So by joining groups, making friends within that film photography community, whether it's in your local area or the extended area, that's a good way to snag good deals. So what you're probably starting to gather from all the tips I've given you so far in this last section is you want to stay away from the really popular camera brands and models. So in that way, you can actually find really alternative options like the Lomo Bel Air, for example. That's a great, still made brand new medium format camera that lets you shoot 6x12 panoramas and even smaller formats. And if you can find one secondhand, that's going to be a really good deal. So if you think you can stretch your budget just that little bit further, might not necessarily be considered that cheap, but it probably still is cheap for a medium format camera. And I'm talking about that range of, let's say, $200 to $300 or somewhere around that. What now opens up to you is a lot more options. And within that price range, one of the best options you can get in terms of format is the 645 format. This, for example, is the Pentax 645. This was my first medium format camera, and I think 645 cameras like this make a great option when you're stepping up from 35mm. The reason for that is they're a lot closer in usability, the amount of frames you get, the aspect ratio to 35mm than other options like 6.7 cameras. So it makes that transition a lot easier when you step up from 35mm to 645, and you get that increased portability and smaller size that is often the case with 645 cameras. Now, it might not be so easy to find a 645N within that few $100 price range, but a really good option is something like Bronica cameras. The Bronica ETRS and the ETRSI and all the variants are really underrated cameras that you can often find for good prices, and they have great lenses. They're very modular and versatile. Or maybe even going for the previous version of this, which is just the normal Pentax 645, or maybe some of the Fuji 645 cameras. There's a lot of options out there and it'll be too hard for me to list them all. So what I would say is do some research beyond just the popular models like this. There might be alternatives that by now are a lot cheaper that even I don't know about. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of people in the comments making their suggestions about cheap medium format cameras that they know about or that they've bought that aren't necessarily the most popular ones on the market. Other things you can consider within that price range are cameras like the Kiev cameras. So let's say you can't afford a Hasselblad, there's probably a Russian-made equivalent of it like the Kiev 88. Or maybe there's alternatives to the Pentax 6.7, like the Pentacon 6 or the Kiev 60. Now these are names that you might not have even heard of before, and that's because they're just not as popular. But that doesn't always mean a sacrifice in reliability. A really worn out Pentax 6.7 isn't necessarily going to be any more reliable than a well looked after or even restored Kiev 60. There's even companies like Arax who make and sell upgraded, fully restored Kiev cameras as their own options on their website. And most of the time it's going to be in much better condition because they've been fully restored. So again, you can see that reoccurrence of that tip. Stay away from the popular brands if you're on a budget. Consider all the alternatives, brands like Bronica or even Kowa or some of those Russian cameras that I mentioned. There's a lot out there if you do the research. So I hope this video was helpful for you if you've been considering getting into medium format camera and you've been worried about the expense. Maybe it made you realize there are more options than just the popular ones like the Mamiya RZ67, the Pentax 6.7. There's a lot of great cameras that aren't so well known that you can get good deals on. It's also worth looking into the alternative options that aren't as popular, including things like toy cameras. So definitely don't get stuck into what's popular if you're not ready for it. Look into what's out there. I hope you do get that opportunity to make the transition and play around and try medium format photography because it is great. It's definitely something unique and worth trying if you've been shooting film for a while. I hope this video was helpful. I'll see you on the next episode of Pushing Film.